like damp cardboard and despair. Nola, my daughter, 7 years old, watched me with those quiet, focused eyes. She had her purple ear defenders on, like always, and her shoulders were loose, calm. She does better in places with steady hums and no surprises. My name's Holden. I'm telling you this now, years down the road, but back then I was 35, driving deliveries in a sedan older than both me and Nola put together. We lived in the edge part of town, where the curbs crumble first and the city paint peels in chunks. Rent was $9.35 a month, and I was 3 months behind. Quick note, before we go on, share in the comments where you're listening from. Let's see which corners of the world we've gathered from today, and let's continue. Dana, my wife, had died 5 years earlier. The bills didn't. And Nola's rehab needs didn't either. Speech therapy twice a week, a sensory gym with weird lighting and rubber floors, plus every copay you can imagine. We scraped by with delivery runs, pharmacies, takeout, florists, sometimes same-night groceries. I could name every pothole in Louisville by feel. Our place was a one-bedroom with walls thin enough to hear other people breathing. The heater made noises like it was learning to cough, and the elevator jerked between floors like it might not make it all the way. But Nola had her little corner, markers, sketch pad, and a bookshelf full of people she drew with huge hands and teeny shoes. She liked structure. Same cereal bowl every morning. Same 5-song playlist, looped. Before we left the apartment, she'd tap out a little rhythm on her palm and wait for me to match it. That morning, I did. Then we grabbed our laundry bag and headed down the block to the strip mall laundromat. The sign outside flickered, the kind that said open, but made you question your whole life. Inside, the machines rattled like jet engines. 2 carts worked. One had a missing wheel, the other had gum under the handle. Nola lined up the quarters, rows of 5, and smiled to herself. That smile mattered. I had exactly $7.50 left after gas. I counted it twice, slid our stuff into washer number 6, the one that didn't wobble too bad, and fed the last quarter under the lid. I said a little prayer it wouldn't jam like it had last week. Then I looked at the clock on the wall, 12:49. I had just under an hour to get across town for the pickup. That's when I felt it. The countdown in my head starting, like a slow drumbeat. Tick, tick, tick. Everything in my life ran on windows. Delivery windows, therapy appointments, dryer timers, grace periods on the rent. I wasn't allowed to forget even one. Because if I missed one window, the next one slammed shut twice as fast. And in that moment, as the washer started to rumble and Nola swayed with the rhythm, I had no idea that this laundromat, this sweaty, nickel-scented place, was about to change the whole damn road we were on. I turned to grab a seat, figuring we'd ride out the wash. That's when I heard the chair beep, long and low, then silence, and that's where it started. I turned toward the row of chairs, but the beep behind me pulled my head around. It wasn't the washer. It was mechanical, deeper. That kind of sound that says something just gave up. The older man had just rolled in. Clean gray sweater, power chair with some years on it, and a hard stare like he didn't miss a thing. His wheels stopped a few feet short of the change machine. Then the chair went dead. Beep. Flash. Done. He tried to lean forward and shove the wheels himself, just enough to get within arm's reach. But the angle was off, and the chair wasn't having it. He muttered something under his breath, low and sharp. Not loud, but you could feel the weight in it. A couple people glanced over, then looked away like they hadn't. That kind of pretending bugs me more than a full-on stare. I looked down at my watch, 12:56, then at Nola, who was stacking her quarters in straight lines, oblivious in her quiet little system. I heard Dana in my head. Help the person in front of you. She used to say that when someone cut in line or fumbled a grocery bag. Didn't matter what was going on. We helped. I walked over and crouched near the guy's armrest. You need a hand? He didn't answer right away. Just narrowed his eyes and gave me a once-over. I don't need charity, he said finally, voice rough with something buried deep. I'm not offering charity, I said. I'm offering quarters and quick hands. You point, I sort. He looked at me like I was half crazy, half wasting his time. Then his shoulders dropped just slightly and he gave the smallest nod I'd ever seen. Dark stuff to that side, he said, nodding toward a bench. Towels go in back. He had a bag in the chair's footwell, so I grabbed it, opened it up, and got to work. Nola watched for a second, then pulled out a little stack of dryer sheets from our bag and started setting them like tiles in a neat square. She does best when there are edges to things. The guy pointed with 2 fingers. Those socks are all mismatched. Throw in whatever. We made quick work of it. Socks, undershirts, flannels. I took over a cart that was half jammed in the corner and used it for towels. Washer Nazadri 14 clanged hard halfway through, scaring a woman who was loading her load. She backed off and said the door was stuck. I pulled the butter knife from my back pocket. Don't ask why I carry one. It's a delivery guy thing, and wedged it under the panel. Old Chevys teach you a few tricks. I jimmied the latch, and the thing popped open with a loud thunk. Washer works, I said, stepping back. She gave me a small thanks and ducked her head. Back at the machine row, the guy in the chair was watching me with a look I couldn't read. The clerk tried to print a receipt for someone, and the machine just spit half a slip, then froze. She started slapping it like that was going to fix anything. I grabbed a yellow notepad from the counter and scribbled out my number, circled it, and wrote, Wash plus dry covered. Call if any issue. I folded it and handed it to the guy. In case someone asks later. He didn't take it right away. Then he reached out, careful, and tucked it in the side pocket of his chair. This thing's still dead, he muttered, fiddling with the joystick. I stepped behind him, leaned down, and said, I'll push. You steer. We inched our way toward the front, down the rubber mat that peeled up at the corners. He was heavier than I expected, but I leaned my weight back and got him moving. When we hit the ramp, I slowed down. The lip at the start was mean, just enough to stop someone dead if they didn't have help. I angled my heels first, grunted, and pushed. He let out a sound, half effort, half pain, and said, Name's Leland. I said, Holden, and got him to the sidewalk. It was hotter out than it looked. I felt sweat between my shoulder blades. He tapped my forearm lightly. You keep quarters for laundry, he said. I keep names that matter. Then he looked over at Nola, still by the washers, lining up her dryer sheets. She wasn't wearing the purple Defenders anymore, just her normal earbuds, which meant she felt safe enough. Nice headphones, Leland said, raising his voice a little. She walked over, dug in her backpack, and pulled out one of her postcards. It had a sketch of a man in a chair, big hands, tiny shoes, her signature style. She handed it to him without a word. He smiled, small but real, and tucked it into the inner fold of his coat like it was something precious. If anybody gives you trouble about that slip, he said to me, tapping his jacket, tell them the machines in here answer to a bigger outfit now. I didn't know what the hell that meant, but I nodded anyway. He waved off my offer for a ride. The chair beeped again, this time a high chime, and the motor kicked in. He turned slow and steady and rolled away without another word. Back inside, the washers hit their spin cycle. I checked my phone, 2 missed pings, one from a prescription run, the other a grocery drop, both canceled. Clock said 1:27. No way I was making my 1:40. I didn't care. That man would have been stuck for who knows how long. When the wash finished and we switched to dryers, I went to toss a candy wrapper near the register and spotted something under the glass. An old, faded receipt slip with a fancy logo I hadn't noticed before. Redwood and Wren Residential. At the bottom, in small print, it read, Shift log approved by L. Wren. I paused just long enough to feel a weird click in my chest. It didn't make sense yet, but something about it stuck. I grabbed our clothes, moved them over to dryer number 14, and pushed the start button like it owed me. The dryers finished up warm, but my stomach had gone cold. I stuffed the clothes back into the duffel, slung it over my shoulder, and got Nola out of there before the after-school rush hit the strip mall. The whole walk back, that faded Redwood and Wren residential slip kept flashing in my head like a neon sign I couldn't read yet. 2 mornings later, there was a knock under our door instead of on it. Pink paper slid across the linoleum. I picked it up with my thumb and felt the cheap ink smear. Access required. Inspection. Wednesday, 3:15 p.m. The fine print under it said potential buyer. To me, that was goodbye with a legal header. I called the number listed right away. The voicemail sounded like an alarm, high and grating. No greeting, just a beep, and a generic threat about leaving a detailed message. I left my name, unit, and added, "My daughter has sensory needs. Please call back so I can prepare her." Nobody called back. By noon the next day, the notice was still sitting on our counter like a loaded trap. Wednesday came heavy. Heat rolling off the cracked parking lot, AC in our unit groaning like it was dying. I stacked Nola's crayons in neat rows on the coffee table, plugged her playlist into the old speaker, and crouched to her level. "Sweetheart, we've got some people coming who might be noisy," I told her. She held my shirt between 2 fingers for a long second, then nodded once and went back to lining her markers. Her quiet meant she was bracing. At 3:12, the elevator clunked below us. 3 sets of footsteps came up the hall. Corbin showed first. Clipboard, tidy jacket, eyes flat. Behind him were 2 suits I didn't recognize. Last came a guy in a golf shirt with 2 white teeth and a look like he'd already bought the place. He stuck out his hand without really looking at me. "Hey, buddy, windows here ever lock right?" he asked, walking past me into the living room. He sniffed the air and made a face like our couch had a smell. "This place is lived in." The name tag pinned crooked to his chest said K. Lipman. He leaned back and grinned at Corbin. "How long you think it'll take to turn it?" Then he tilted his head toward Nola. "Kid housebroken?" My jaw locked. "She's my daughter. She has sensory needs." "Watch your mouth," I said, voice low enough to carry weight. Lipman laughed like I'd told a joke at his country club. "Relax, buddy. Just asking." Nola slid behind my legs and pressed her headphones tighter against her ears. Her shoulders were up around her neck. My hands balled before I even knew it. Corbin moved through the unit like a realtor on autopilot. Baseboard heat, vinyl plank flooring, 1-bedroom configuration, asset in need of minor refurbishment. He said asset like it was holy text, not home, not unit with people inside. He pointed at the scuff marks on the wall like they were crimes, measured the bedroom with a red laser, writing down numbers with a pen that clicked too loud. That's when I noticed his hand shaking, just a hair. He usually moved like a brick. I clocked it anyway. Lipman poked at the window lock, opened our fridge without asking, and stared at Nola's drawings taped to it. He smirked and whispered something to one of the suits. They all chuckled. Corbin kept talking about square footage like nothing was happening. When they were done with their tour, Lipman said loud enough for the hall to hear, "This one's ripe," like we were fruit going bad. Corbin didn't correct him. He just faced me in the doorway and held out a paper. "You're past due. Ledger shows $2,805 plus a $95 processing fee," he said. "No, please. No plan." I swallowed the burn in my throat. "I'm working extra shifts. Can we set up a plan?" He stared past me at the fridge, at Nola's taped-up sketches of big hands and tiny shoes. His jaw tightened. Policy is policy. I didn't trust myself to answer. Behind me, Nola's pencil snapped in her fingers. The sound cracked the air. They walked out without another word. Lipman muttered something about a quick flip, and Corbin didn't stop him. The elevator door clanged shut, and the building went back to its thin silence. A minute later, Ms. Patel from 2B knocked softly. She's in her 60s, runs the front desk at a dentist's office. She slipped me a folded paper and said in a low voice, "My nephew handles traffic court. Maybe he can knock off that bogus ticket they stuck on your car." Then she patted my arm and hurried back down the hall. I leaned against the door frame, unfolding the pink notice again. On the back, under the standard boilerplate, was the letterhead, Redwood and Wren Residential. Same exact shape as the laundromat slip I'd seen 2 days ago, the one with shift log approved by L. Wren in the corner. I held it up to the light like that would make it say more. It didn't. It just sat there, pink and official and heavy in my hands, like a knot tightening around my chest. I kept that pink notice in the glove box, folded between 2 napkins from a sandwich shop that shut down last winter. It sat there like it was daring me to pretend it wasn't real. The number at the bottom, same as the slip from the laundromat. Redwood and Wren Residential. So when my delivery app pinged me for a midday run to an address way out in the Westwell Office Park, Suite 910, signature required. Company name Redwood and Wren Residential. I didn't even check the payout. I tapped accept before I could think too hard. I wasn't looking for a paycheck. I wanted to look at whatever kind of place could connect a dead washer, a dead power chair, and a 3-day eviction timer. I dropped Nola off at Mrs. Santos's after-school program early. She didn't complain. She lined her smooth pennies on the table, 5 in a row, then looked up at me and asked, "Can I make another card for the chairman?" I told her, "Absolutely." It was one of those cloudless afternoons where the sun bounces off every panel of glass until your eyes water. I parked in the visitor lot and winced at my rusted bumper in the rear view. Felt like I'd left a grease mark just by pulling in. I tucked my shirt, smoothed the collar, and grabbed the padded envelope from the passenger seat. Inside, everything smelled like new carpet and filtered air. I took the elevator up to the 9th floor, past 3 security cameras, and a sensor that clicked when I stepped through it. The front desk woman clocked the frayed edges on my sleeves but gave me a real smile anyway. The wall behind her had a list of donors etched into glass. Something about community housing funds. Right near the top, twice in big bronze, Leland Wren. I signed the courier pad. It blinked. "Courier Holden, thank you." Then a security guy in a navy blazer came over and scanned my ID like I was applying for citizenship. I turned to leave. "Excuse me, Mr. Holden?" a woman said behind me. She wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than my car. Nameplate on her desk read, R. Kim, Compliance. She gestured toward a small table to the side and said, "Do you have 1 minute? I just have a quick question about your drop." She pulled up a tablet and slid it across the table. My breath caught for a second. On the screen was a photo of the yellow laundromat slip I'd written on 2 days earlier. My chicken scratch handwriting and my number, circled twice. The one I'd left for the guy in the chair. My stomach flipped. "Did this issue get resolved?" she asked. Her voice was even, but I could tell this wasn't just protocol. I nodded slowly. "The machines worked. After. The ramp needs a grind. It's got a lip that kicks you back if you're not careful. And the guy, Leland, I pushed him to the sidewalk. My kid gave him a drawing. That's about it." Her eyes locked on me. Not in a rude way, just focused, sharp, like she'd just found a rare file and didn't want to lose it. She tapped the screen off. "Mr. Wren asked about you," she said. Quiet, measured. "He didn't have your name, just said you pushed when no one else did. And your daughter gave him something." That sentence landed like weight on my back. I didn't know what to say. Before I could think of a reply, my phone buzzed hard in my pocket. I pulled it out. Corbin's number. Text message. "Notice to vacate. 72 hours. Hand delivery at 5:30. The time on my screen read 4:11. R. Kim must have seen my face fall, because her voice softened a notch. "Is everything okay?" I answered honestly. "We're about to be kicked out, 3 months behind, processing fees piled up. No one's interested in hearing about my kid's therapy schedule." She stared at me for a beat. Then she said, "I'll pass that along." At 4:25, my app pinged again. Another rush delivery. Pick up at the same suite. Drop off at Oakmont Regional Office, Redwood and Wren. Attention, C. Wren. That was a name I hadn't heard yet, but I didn't like any part of it lining up. I signed for the new envelope and headed out fast, cutting through afternoon traffic like I was racing something I couldn't see. Oakmont sat on the edge of town, near the freeway overpass. It was a squat brick cube that looked like it had forgotten how to be a real office. Flickering light over the entrance, 2 dead bushes on either side. I parked beside a silver import I'd seen before, Corbin's, always backed in like he owned the curb. Inside, the lobby felt colder than it needed to be. A corkboard on the wall held the usual sad announcements: fire drill, lost key, pest control. But in the middle was a flyer with thick black font: Opportunity Ladder, Work Credit Program, Pilot Phase. Small box under it read, Ask for Leland. I stared at it a moment, then took a photo on my phone and pinned the flyer back clean. I got back to the car at 4:51. Oakmont's 10 minutes from our place. I drove like every second mattered, because it did. Picked Nola up from Ms. Santos at 5:05. She was coloring a postcard with thick blue lines and tiny shoes, and we pulled into our lot by 5:20 on the dot. I parked with the nose out, like Corbin. Then I turned off the ignition, reached into the glove box, and pulled out the pink notice. I folded it tighter, stuck it in my back pocket, and walked Nola upstairs, just in time for whatever hand delivery looked like in the real world. At 5:28, I heard the elevator clank and then footsteps, slow but sure, coming down the hallway. I set out 2 chairs by the door, one for me, one for Nola, like somehow that could anchor the place against whatever was about to happen. She sat with her knees together, sketchbook in her lap, pencils lined like soldiers. Corbin came first, his coat buttoned tight, paperwork stacked in his arms like a shield. Behind him was Lippman in his golf shirt, the same grin plastered on his face like he'd already picked curtains for a room he didn't own. The man actually whistled as they walked, and it grated at me like sandpaper. The elevator door didn't shut. A third man rolled out in a power chair, coat pressed, hair combed, eyes steady. The same old guy from the laundromat. The hallway went dead quiet. Even the building's heater seemed to stop coughing. Corbin's face changed like a flip book, tight, pale, then something else I hadn't seen on him before. "Dad?" he said, voice dropping a pitch. My breath caught hard in my chest. Leland didn't answer his son right away. He looked at me first, then at Nola, then at our chipped door frame. He gave me a nod, small but solid, like we were back at the ramp again. Then he turned his chair slightly toward Corbin and said, "Not here." Corbin stammered, papers shifting in his arms. "We're following policy, Dad. There are timelines we can't—" Leland's voice cut like glass. "You're moving to evict the man who pushed me when my chair died, and whose daughter did me the honor of a drawing." Lippman opened his mouth to say something slick, but Leland didn't even glance at him. "Put the papers away," he told Corbin. Corbin froze. He looked down at the files, then at Nola, and finally at me. His throat worked, but nothing came out. Lippman shifted from foot to foot, clearly annoyed that the show wasn't going his way. I didn't make a speech. I just leaned down to Nola and said, "We're okay." She lifted her headphones a touch, eyes locked on Leland's chair like it was some animal she was still deciding if she trusted. "Give me the ledger," Leland said, palm out. Corbin hesitated, then handed it over. Leland scanned the columns, found a line, and tapped it with his finger. "Processing fee $95? We're not that company." Corbin's voice shook. "You set the turnaround goals yourself, Dad. You've been chasing turn rates and forgot faces," Leland snapped. "You send policy when people ask for time." Corbin's jaw clenched. "I sent help offers you ignored." "I asked for time," Leland fired back. "You sent policy." I stood there like a coat rack with a pulse, holding Nola's hand. She whispered up at me, "Is he the chairman?" I nodded. Lippman tried to regain control. "We should schedule the new showing date while we're here," he said loudly. Leland turned his head just enough. "Leave," he said. Lippman scoffed. "Sir, with respect." "Leave," Leland repeated, sharper. The hallway air thickened. Lippman muttered something about wasted time and ducked into the elevator. The doors closed slow, like even the machine didn't want him back. Leland rolled his chair forward a few inches until he was lined up with Corbin. "Holden did right, even when no one was looking," he said, eyes still on his son. Then he added, "You will fix this. You will apologize. And you will mean it." Corbin's eyes flicked to me, then to Nola. He swallowed hard. "I'm sorry for the way I handled this," he said, voice catching on handled. I believed the crack more than the words. Leland didn't blink. Again, Corbin crouched slightly to Nola's level. "I'm sorry I scared you. I'm sorry I treated your home like a number. That wasn't right." Nola stared at his shoes, then at Leland's wheels, then back at me. She didn't say anything, but her shoulders dropped a little. "That's as much as you get from her on a first pass." Leland looked back at me. "May we come in?" he asked, not as a boss, but like a man who'd been at a stranger's door before. I opened it wide. Inside, the place smelled like detergent and takeout and kid markers. Nothing fancy but ours. Corbin stepped in first, papers now hanging loose in his hand. He looked smaller somehow. Leland rolled in behind, his chair motor soft, almost polite. He parked near the table, scanning the space without the usual landlord's eye, more like a father taking in a problem he should have seen sooner. Nola went to her corner, started sketching without headphones, eyes flicking up at Leland every few seconds. Leland noticed and gave her a small nod. Corbin shifted his weight from foot to foot. "Dad, you should have told me." "I shouldn't have to," Leland cut him off. "I built this firm so people wouldn't be treated like this." Corbin rubbed his temple. "We've been under pressure. Investors, compliance. Pressure is no excuse for disrespect," Leland said, his tone final. I stood by the counter, hands braced on the chipped laminate. "What happens now?" I asked, voice low but steady. Leland glanced at Corbin. "My son is going to correct this ledger. He is going to end the eviction action. He is going to freeze your late fees until we review them properly. And he is going to come back to this building in front of your daughter and apologize publicly. Because if you don't say it where it counts, it's just sound." Corbin nodded once. "I'll do it." "You'll do it right," Leland added. Corbin's eyes went to the fridge again, to the drawings. "She drew me in court shoes," he murmured. It wasn't an apology, but it wasn't nothing. Leland leaned back in his chair, exhaling. "Sit, Holden. You look like you're about to fall over." I pulled out a chair and sat. Nola drew a new figure on her page, two people facing each other, one with big hands, one with tiny shoes. She slid it across the table toward Leland without a word. He picked it up, held it between thumb and forefinger like it might break, and said, "Thank you, Nola." His voice cracked on her name the same way Corbin's had on handled. Corbin watched his father carefully, like he was seeing him for the first time in years. Leland didn't look back. He just kept his eyes on the drawing. For a moment, nobody spoke. The heater kicked on with a cough. Outside, a car alarm blipped and went silent again. Then Leland broke the quiet. "This ends tonight," he said. "We'll talk about what begins next." We sat around our coffee table with the chipped corners that had drawn blood more than once. I passed out the only clean mugs we had, lukewarm tea and instant coffee, and Nola curled into the floor pillows in the corner, sketchbook on her lap, headphones on, one eye always drifting toward Leland. He adjusted his chair, glanced at the kitchen, the worn linoleum, the broken toaster we kept forgetting to throw out. Then he turned back to me and said, "Tell me what you do." I shrugged. Delivery gigs, whatever pings, prescriptions, groceries, Chinese takeout, florist drops. I piece together hours like it's a jigsaw puzzle. Some nights I'm out until 2. And then some mornings I get up again at 7 to do it all over. He nodded once. "You know roots. You show up. That's 2 things we value." I wasn't sure if he meant that in a polite way or a job offer kind of way, so I just nodded back. Then he shifted in his chair and looked past me for a second like he was remembering something only he could see. I lost my wife 10 years ago, he said. After she passed, I buried myself in the firm. All I did was build policies, buildings, tenant portfolios. Somewhere along the way, I started treating every problem like it had a profit margin. He rubbed his thumb along the side of his armrest. The ladder I built for myself, it broke for a lot of people who were supposed to be climbing it. Corbin sat stiff on the couch, silent. That was fine by me. I'm not here to insult you with a gift, Leland said, turning back to me. But I do have a counteroffer to eviction. We've got 2 part-time routes open. Inter-office courier runs in the mornings. Plus evening work, couple nights a week. Grounds help, trash, bulbs, stairwells, straight pay plus rent credit if you want it. He reached into a file attached to his chair arm and slid a printed form across the table. It was crisp and official. Opportunity ladder, pilot program terms. Below that, 1650 HR, up to 18 HRs week. Each hour earns 9.25 credit against rent at participating properties. I stared at the paper. I ran the math in my head without even meaning to. 18 hours was over $160 cash and another $160 plus it off rent. That's what breathing room looked like. Corbin finally cleared his throat. I can freeze the late fees immediately, he said, voice quiet, aimed at the coffee table, and convert the remaining balance into a structured plan. 0 interest, monthly credits applied as you earn. Leland gave him a look that said, should have led with that, but didn't speak it out loud. I leaned back. My mind raced ahead, what shifts I could swap, what hours I could move. I'll take the courier slot. Mornings. I can run app gigs in the afternoon, keep Nola's therapy days open. Leland gave me this slow nod, the kind that feels more like permission than approval. Good, he said. That's the kind of ladder that builds itself. Nola tapped her pencil and walked over to the table, holding a card she'd just finished. She handed it to Leland without saying anything. On the front was a blue marker sketch of a power chair, tiny shoes peeking underneath, and a cloud above it labeled, Safe. Leland took it like it was glass. You could see in his face he wasn't faking a damn thing. He held it like it meant more than the files he carried. Corbin blinked hard, looking anywhere but at her. Leland turned the page over, smiled, and slid the drawing into the inside of his coat. Thank you, Nola, he said, voice lower now. I'll keep it close. Then he looked at me again. There's a 2-bedroom open at Maple Court. 4th floor, new elevators, evening security, fixed rent, no free year nonsense, but a number you can plan for and earn down. I sat still for a second. Maple Court? That's the one near the therapy gym, right? Leland nodded. Close enough to walk it on days you don't want to drive. You'd be transferred under the latter terms. Starting balance fresh. No history carried over. He turned to Corbin. Get it scheduled. Corbin nodded. Yes, sir. Then Leland added, calm but sharp. And at Nola's school this week, you will say what you should have said tonight, out loud, in front of people who matter to her. Corbin flinched, like someone had hit him in the chest. Understood. I let it sit for a second. I wasn't built for speeches, but I looked Leland in the eye and said, I'm not looking for rescue, just a way to earn it and keep my kids safe. Leland gave me a quiet smile, the kind that says everything and nothing at the same time. That's all a ladder is, Holden. The climb's still yours. We just make sure the rungs hold. The courier job started that next Monday, just like they said it would. Morning runs between 3 offices, Oakmont, Westwell, and the tower off Riverfront. I carried a box of envelopes that needed signatures, a refrigerated pouch on Tuesdays and Thursdays for meds or samples, depending on who was upstairs. It wasn't flashy, but it was steady. Like coffee at sunrise, no guesswork, just go. Maple Court had a 2-bedroom open on the 4th floor. Elevator ran smooth, no lurches or groans. The hallway lights all worked, and the door closed without a deadlift. I signed the lease at $1.15 even, and every hour I clocked on the job chipped away at it. First time in years I looked at rent and saw a number I could actually wrestle to the ground. That Tuesday, the sedan turned on me. I'd just finished a drop at Westwell, hit the gas, and white smoke poured from under the hood like the car was trying to vanish. I limped it 2 blocks before the temp gauge screamed red. Jess, a driver I knew from the pharmacy circuit, pulled up behind me before I could even call her. She saw the steam, rolled her eyes, and said, "Pop the hood. I got tools." Her socket set was in the back seat under an old booster. We patched a cracked hose with more faith than science, right under the maple tree near the lot entrance. She gave me a ride to O'Reilly's and back, and I bought her a Coke with the last $3 in my glove box. "You're lucky this didn't blow the whole system," she said, wiping her hands. "Next time, watch the coolant like it owes you rent." At Nola's school, we had her IEP meeting that Thursday. You sit at a rectangle table under buzzing lights, surrounded by staff trying to sound like they're not reading off templates. The papers get passed around, printed on stiff cardstock like they matter more if they weigh more. I signed where I had to, circled the language around quiet spaces and transition cues. "She needs clear exits," I told them. "Corners she can turn without panic. Not more hallway chaos." Ms. Santos nodded from the far side of the table, arms crossed. Her dad shows up. That's more than most. Corbin showed up at the tail end. Button-down shirt, no clipboard, just him. He asked if we could talk in the library. We walked there quiet. Nola was already in the beanbag corner with her sketchpad, headphones halfway on. Corbin squatted near her and spoke softly. "Nola," he said, slow. "I'm sorry for how I acted at your home. I was rude. I scared you. That wasn't right, and I'll do better." She looked at his shoes for a second. Then she reached into her backpack, pulled out a sticker, smiley face with stars, and handed it to him like a receipt. He took it with both hands, like he didn't trust himself not to drop it. He stuck it on the front of his notebook right next to the pen loop. I didn't say anything, didn't need to. Thursday night, I got a knock from building staff. There'd been a complaint filed against me, monopolizing laundry carts and shorting dry times, whatever that meant. I asked who filed it. The desk guy shrugged and handed over the paper. Name on it, K. Lippman, using an address 1 block over. I felt the blood rise in my ears. The man wasn't even a tenant in our building. Later that night, Miss I. Patel caught me in the parking lot while I was unloading groceries. She leaned in close and whispered, "That man, he's been bragging. Said he offered Corbin a finder's fee to get your unit when you inevitably messed it up." I stared at her. "You serious?" She nodded. "My nephew caught it on his phone. He was visiting. I can send you the audio." I didn't wait. I uploaded the file to the tenant portal under my work log, flagged it for compliance, and added a short voice memo. Complaint came from a non-resident. If there's a pattern, it needs stopping now. Next morning, I got a message back from Leland's office. Compliance looked into it. Turns out Lippman had tried to hand Corbin an envelope 2 weeks earlier. Corbin declined, told him to leave the property. That part I hadn't known. So Ms. Patel's story was half true. Lippman offered. The answer was no. But that didn't stop the man from showing up again. Security footage caught him pushing a laundry cart full speed into our front door around 9:30 that night. The slam was hard enough to shake the hinges and wake Nola. She came out of her room covering her ears and crying without sound. I didn't need more evidence. I called it in. Corbin didn't drag his feet. He filed the paperwork personally and issued a ban from all Redwood and Wren properties. Lippman was done. That day, I still did my morning routes. Oakmont to Westwell, back to the tower by 10. Then I got Nola from school and took her to therapy. She rode in the back, counting nickels, tapping her fingers on her thighs to stay steady. Every time we hit a red light, she'd reach forward and tap my forearm twice. It's her way of saying, "We're okay." And that day I believed her. The folding chairs were lined up like a clinic waiting room, tight rows, metal legs that scraped against the tile when people shifted. Maple Court's community room smelled like overused carpet cleaner, and that burnt coffee they always brew for meetings like someone might stay longer if it was free. It was Tuesday at 6 on the dot when Leland wheeled himself to the front of the room. He didn't use a mic, just raised his voice enough to reach the back wall. That kind of confidence doesn't come from volume. It comes from knowing the room's already listening. He started by talking about the ladder. "Let me be clear," he said, scanning the crowd. "This program isn't magic. It's not charity. It's not forgiveness for being poor, or behind, or tired. It's trade. You show up, you do the work, and you earn your way into stability. Nothing more, and definitely nothing less." People nodded. A few shifted forward in their chairs. Even the grump from 3D, who hated everything louder than a whisper, leaned in like he might care where this was going. Then Leland cleared his throat and looked toward the back corner, where Nola and I were sitting. "But before we talk about trade," he said, "we have to talk about correction." He asked us to stand by the vending machine. I didn't want to. I don't like attention, and Nola doesn't either. But we stood. She clutched her sketchbook to her chest and looked at the gum spots on the floor. Corbin stepped up next, wearing a clean jacket and a tie that looked like it had been knotted 3 times before he gave up and started over. He looked taller than usual, but smaller too. He didn't pick up the mic. He walked over to where we stood and turned away from the crowd. He faced Nola. "I was wrong," he said. "I treated your home like a number. I brought someone into your space who didn't respect you, your dad, or your drawings. And when he made you uncomfortable, I didn't listen. I was focused on the building instead of the people inside it." He paused, made sure she was still looking at him. She was, just barely. "I know your name is Nola. I said it to myself out loud 10 times before this so I wouldn't get it wrong, because you deserve to hear it said the right way." She shifted her weight and blinked up at him. "My job," Corbin said, "is to protect homes, not just assets. I forgot that. I won't again." Then he pulled something from his notebook. A sticker, round, yellow, smiling, the one she gave him. "If it's okay," he said, "I'd like to keep this. It reminds me to slow down." Nola nodded once. That's all. But in her world, that was a hug, and a thank you rolled into one. The room went still in a way that didn't feel heavy, just full. People looked at their shoes, then at us, then at each other. Ms. Patel wiped her nose with a napkin. The maintenance guy leaned on his broom and didn't look up, but he didn't leave either. Leland didn't let the moment go without sharpening it. "Apology without change is just sound," he said. "So we're changing more than words tonight." He announced it clean. All processing fees, across every Redwood and Wren property, gone. Retroactive. Past fees would convert into rent credits for those enrolled in work hours or willing to take them. No fine print, no legal traps. Just credit for effort. A woman from 2F whispered, "Did he say all?" Leland kept going. "He said me, and 2 other tenants, Clarence from the East Building, and Marta, a single mom from upstairs, would be the first 3 to move into the new safety wing. Newly secured, better lighting, fixed rates locked for 3 years. Each work hour now officially logged as a line against the ledger. A clean ledger. One with math you could live with." After the meeting, folks gathered in small knots, talking, asking questions, some even pulling out pens to sign up. I didn't move right away. Nola had drawn something during the speech and tapped my elbow to show me. It was a card. 2 people holding a ladder steady while someone climbed it. Big hands, tiny shoes. She handed it to Leland as he rolled past. He took it like it was a check worth more than rent. He laughed once, low in his throat, then choked a little and said, "I'll put it where I see it every morning." A woman with a press badge and a beat-up notepad stopped me near the exit. "Do you want to give a statement for the neighborhood paper?" I looked at her, then looked down at Nola, who was counting the tiles to the front door with her toes. "I work," I said. "My kid sleeps. We're good. That's all I wanted." She smiled and wrote it down like it was gospel. On the way out, Corbin stopped me by the coffee table, where the cup sat half full and forgotten. He held out a folded sheet. "I found a therapy grant the company missed during intake," he said. "It's for sensory development. Could help with gym costs." I unfolded it. Hotline number, application code, fax number for forms. It looked legit. "Thanks," I said, sliding it behind my license in my wallet. "That's where the important stuff goes." He nodded. That's where I hoped it'd end up. We moved into Maple Court on a Saturday in late April. The air was still cool enough for jackets in the morning, but warm by lunch. Jess showed up right on time, driving a borrowed box truck that had U-ship half peeled off the side. She brought her son, Mikey, who carried half the kitchen in one trip, and asked if we had snacks. We did. Nola handed him a fruit bar like it was currency. Ms. Patel met us at the lobby doors with a potted plant and a look like she wasn't sure if we'd make it or just barely did. "Peace lily," she said, pressing it into my hands. "Low maintenance. But don't forget it entirely." The elevator didn't groan once. The new place had a deadbolt that lined up with the strike plate on the first turn. Not the second. Not after you lifted the knob and kicked the bottom. The peephole sat at kid height. Nola checked it 5 times the first hour. The kitchen had room for her art setup without blocking the sink, which felt like magic. She laid out her markers by color and hummed a soft loop of the same song while I unpacked plates. I started morning courier runs that same week. 3 offices, tight loop, Oakmont, Westwell, and the tower with the lobby that smells like printer toner. I learned which guard liked dad jokes and which one hated being handed anything before their second coffee. Westwell's printer spit labels hot, burned my palm once and left a ghost line for 2 days. 2 nights a week I clocked hours on the grounds crew. Trash pickup, bulb changes, sweeping stairs. Nothing hard, but honest. I liked that it showed. You swept a stairwell, it stayed swept. You replaced a light, it came on. No guesswork, no rework, no chasing someone else's mess. Just clean under your shoes. Each hour knocked $9.25 off rent. First month I worked enough to take off $277.50. The next month I hit $314. I wrote the new balance on the fridge in marker, underlined it twice. That math felt better than any forbearance letter I'd ever gotten. It felt real. It felt like proof. Corbin started showing up differently too. I saw him walking the buildings with the maintenance crew, sleeves rolled, clipboard forgotten in the truck. One afternoon I caught him tightening a kicked-in latch on a side door, tie slung over his shoulder like a towel. He looked up and said, "This was never supposed to get this bad." I nodded and went back to hauling trash bags. You don't need a reply for everything. Leland expanded the ladder program to 2 more buildings by June. He put me on the tenant advisory call, a monthly speakerphone with 6 voices and 1 shared agenda. He asked us what worked and what didn't. I kept my feedback short. Less words, more structure. The grant Corbin found kicked in sooner than expected. It covered part of Nola's sensory gym for the summer season. I called him from the lobby of the gym just to say thanks. He said, "You earned it yourself," and hung up before I could say anything else. I appreciated that. Jess and I traded shifts whenever one of our kids got sick. She brought over a floor lamp one week, said it didn't match her new couch. I didn't care what it matched. It gave Nola a better light for drawing. "You fixed the brakes yet?" she asked one day after a double run. "Pads are new," I said. "No more prayers at stop signs." She smiled. "You sound like a man with traction again." At night, Nola sat at the coffee table tracing floor plans in her notebook. She drew stairs from the old place to the new one, labeled each landing with a tiny heart. Then she added an elevator with wings and Leland's chair drawn in blue marker, decked out with racing stripes. Leland saw it when he visited for a maintenance check and laughed harder than I'd ever heard. "Tell her I accept the upgrades," he said, "as long as it still corners tight." A letter came from compliance 2 weeks after Lippman's stunt with the laundry cart. Official stamp, clean header. He was barred permanently. Complaint marked as harassment. I filed the letter in a drawer with other papers that mattered now. Lease, school plan, work hours. Pages that gave a man something to hold when things leaned sideways. I looked at that drawer one night and realized it was heavier than it used to be. Not with junk, real stuff. Proof of work, proof of home. And for the first time in a long while, I slept without the sound of someone else's feet pacing above me or fear crawling under the door. The machines at Maple Court take cards now. Tap, swipe, chip, the whole deal. But I still carry quarters in my jacket pocket. $4 worth. In a little pill bottle with a cracked lid. They clink when I walk. I don't even hear it anymore. That sound's been with me longer than most people I know. Old habits like that matter. They remind you where you started. They remind you who you were when showing up meant everything. I'm past 55 now. Knees aren't what they were. Back stiff in the morning. And my left shoulder clicks every time I reach for the top shelf. But I move. I get up. I keep at it. Nola's 27, lives downtown now. Above a coffee shop she says smells like ambition and over-roasted beans. She still carries a sketchbook wherever she goes. Still draws big hands and tiny shoes. Says people look more like they're walking towards something that way. I asked her once what that something was. She said, "Whatever matters enough to make them keep moving." I stayed on as a courier longer than I thought I would. Routine felt like safety for a while, but eventually, they trained me to run the community room bookings and lead move-in orientations. I tell new tenants where the clean corners are, how the light hits the stairwells in winter, which dryer eats socks. I tell them the ladder isn't just a name. I tell them I've climbed it. Not all the way up, maybe, but high enough to breathe. Folks ask me sometimes if I got a miracle. I never say yes. A miracle means you didn't bleed for it. I bled plenty. I tell them this instead. A man in a chair taught me you can push, and you can be pushed. And both are human. Sometimes all it takes to shift your whole trajectory is one moment where someone decides you matter. Leland still keeps Nola's card on the shelf behind his desk, the one with the two people holding the ladder steady. It's sun-faded now, bent at one corner, but it's still there. He told me once that he sees it before every meeting and after every long day. He and Corbin aren't perfect. They don't pretend they are anymore, but they work the corners now. They patch what gets frayed. That counts. Corbin said her name right in front of a room full of people, and then went out and changed the entire way the company handles fees. That's better than flowers. That's repentance that built something. I don't forget the numbers. 3 months late at $9.35 a month, with fees that stacked faster than breath. I don't forget the day I was looking at a full eviction over $2,900, and a golf shirt jackass was cracking jokes about my kid like we were items in a clearance bin. That stuff leaves a mark. That mark keeps you from softening the truth just because things turned out okay. But I also don't forget the ramp, the lip, the way it catches you if no one leans into it with you. Life's full of those lips. Most people just keep rolling backward, wondering why it always feels steep. But sometimes someone shows up and braces their heels, shifts their weight, and takes the load for just long enough to help you push through. If you came to this story looking for revenge, it's not in a courtroom. It's not in some takedown moment where the bad guy gets dragged out in handcuffs. It's me, watching my daughter sleep through the night in a place where the locks catch on the first try and the hallway smells like floor polish instead of mildew. It's knowing the same man who once said policy is policy now walks buildings at night, asking tenants what would make them feel safer. That's justice that lasts longer than applause. Under my sock drawer, there's still a yellow slip from a laundromat, the one with my scrawled number and a dumb little note about quarters. Behind it, tucked like a bookmark, is a photo of Nola's first drawing of Leland's chair. I don't take them out every day, but when the month gets loud, when the car battery dies, or a therapy bill comes late, or the future feels heavier than the rent, I lay them both out on the kitchen table and just look. That was the first payment I ever made that counted, the one where I paid forward instead of begging behind. It's the only kind of currency that keeps value over time, the kind where you show up and someone else does too. Not for glory, not for credit. just because you were the person in front of them. And that's the point. When the rules feel colder than people, are you the one pushing the ramp for someone, or the one brave enough to ask for the push? Drop a comment, even just good story, or your take. If you'd like to support the channel, tap Super Thanks. It's optional, but really helps. And please like and subscribe. Huge for us, easy for you.
YouTube picked this for you. Tap it. Let's see if they guessed right.